Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
Strong sense of relief. State Department staffers react to Tillerson's ouster. State Department employees had one main reaction to Rex Tillerson's ouster as Secretary of State on Tuesday: good riddance. President Donald Trump's decision to fire the top U.S. diplomat sent a wave of hope through a department battered by low morale under Tillerson, who dismissed the expertise of career diplomats and sought to downsize the department. Tillerson was also widely seen as unable to speak for the president, who frequently undercut him on policy issues. "There is strong sense of relief at state," said Brett Bruen, a former department official. "The last year has been traumatic, to put it mildly. It was as though T-Rex stomped through Foggy Bottom, devouring staff and structures." Several current state officials said they also hope to bid farewell to Tillerson's top aides, including Chief of Staff Margaret Peterlin and Policy Chief Brian Hook, whom they criticize for forming a protective and secretive clique around the secretary during his nearly 14-month tenure. "People see this as a chance for a clean sweep," said one staffer, who like most others spoke on condition of anonymity to avoid losing his job. "This team has proven itself incapable of managing the State Department." Multiple foreign and civil service officers struck an optimistic note about Tillerson's chosen replacement, CIA Director Mike Pompeo. Many hope that Pompeo's close relationship with Trump will mean that the State Department will gain more influence with a president who has often sidelined it. But some sounded more wary, pointing out that Pompeo has a hawkish reputation and little diplomatic experience. One recently departed State Department official noted that Pompeo had a reputation in some quarters of the CIA as a political partisan, warning, if people at state dislike Tillerson, they might downright hate Pompeo. Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Bob Corker said in a statement on Tuesday that Pompeo's confirmation hearing was expected to be held in April. Deputy Secretary of State John Sullivan, a more popular figure than Tillerson in the department, is expected to take over as acting secretary in the meantime. In a statement before reporters on Tuesday afternoon, a wary-looking Tillerson, whose father died last month and who got little sleep on his just-ended Africa trip, said he would delegate his responsibilities to Sullivan by the end of the day Tuesday. His last official day as secretary will be March 31st, he said, to ensure an orderly and smooth transition. Tillerson praised U.S. diplomats as well as U.S. troops and other government staffers. He praised the State Department's efforts to bring pressure on North Korea for its nuclear program, while also warning that Russia was headed on a path to greater isolation. But Tillerson did not mention Trump by name nor specifically thank him, and he took no questions. "I'll now return to private life, be a private citizen, proud American, proud to have served my country," Tillerson said. He and the Trump have a history of differences that veered into the personal on at least one occasion, with Tillerson reported to have once referred to the president as a moron. When later questioned by reporters, he did not deny making the remark. Despite months of rumors that Tillerson would be fired or simply quit, the announcement on Tuesday took many U.S. diplomats by surprise, and some were uncomfortable about the way Tillerson was treated. The news came just as Tillerson had returned to the United States from a trip to Africa, a journey that had suggested he planned to stick around for a while. And there were conflicting accounts of when Tillerson learned he would be pushed out. Some reports said he didn't know until he saw a Trump tweet on Tuesday, while others said the president's chief of staff, John Kelly, had warned him on Friday. Tillerson had canceled his appearances in Africa on Saturday. Aides said he had fallen ill. Tillerson's Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy, Steve Goldstein, was also pushed out of his job on Tuesday. His ouster came after he said Tillerson hadn't spoken to Trump about his future until Tuesday morning and was unaware of the reason he was being fired, an account that seemed to contradict the White House. Tillerson, a former ExxonMobil CEO, himself had said he would be at the helm of the department through at least 2018. At the same time, he seemed to have notched some recent wins with a president who frequently undercut him, The secretary had been advocating for talks with North Korea long before Trump last week said he'd be willing to meet face-to-face with the country's leader, Kim Jong-un, although Trump's decision seemed to catch Tillerson unawares. Some lawmakers said Tillerson's rocky tenure was in part due to Trump's lack of discipline. A number noted that Tillerson had been more hawkish on Russia than the president. That included this week, when the secretary directly blamed the Kremlin for a nerve agent attack in Britain, while the White House refrained from naming a culprit. While I have opposed several of Secretary Tillerson's decisions during his tenure at the State Department, I don't believe that President Trump ever gave him the trust, personnel and resources he needed to be effective as the nation's top diplomat, said Senator Chris Coons, D-Del. Several state staffers have noted over the past year an irony at the heart of Tillerson's tenure. He took over at Foggy Bottom having had a long track record in management but little diplomatic experience, and yet he proved to be better at the latter than the former Secretary of State. Meanwhile, there are a host of questions about how Pompeo will tackle both policy and management issues at the State Department. Tillerson has moved to redesign State, an initiative that has come to largely revolve around modernizing technology and upgrading human resources rules. Thanks in part to disagreements with the White House, Tillerson has failed to fill numerous leadership slots at the department, while several of his nominees have yet to be confirmed by the Senate. It's not clear whether Pompeo will move ahead with Tillerson's nominees for some of those slots. Pompeo, too, is more hawkish than Tillerson on some key issues. In particular, Pompeo, a former Republican congressman from Kansas, has been a harsh critic of the Iran nuclear deal. While Tillerson has advocated for keeping the Barack Obama-era deal in place, Pompeo is more willing to question its value. State Department employees, many of whom view the Iran deal as a major diplomatic achievement, said they hoped Pompeo would at least be more willing to consider their expertise and opinions. While Pompeo's views seem to have expressed a preference for force over diplomacy, my guess is he knows his success is dependent upon the information that comes to him through the building, one state official said. I think he'll rely more heavily on depth of experience across the department than Tillerson ever cared to. How Pompeo will deal with the threat from Russia is another open question. The CIA chief has called out Russia over its interference in the 2016 presidential race. But he's also managed to stay in Trump's good graces even as the president has downplayed intelligence agencies' assessment that Russia intervened in the election to help Trump win. I sincerely hope he's not being set up to fail as so many others have been by this White House, said Representative Eliot Engel of New York, the ranking Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He's a former House colleague, and I respect his candor about Russia's ongoing effort to attack American democracy. Pompeo's nomination for the Foggy Bottom role has alarmed human rights activists, who have criticized him for seeming unwilling to denounce the use of torture, or enhanced interrogation, and mass surveillance. Sarah Margon, the Washington director for Human Rights Watch, called Trump's choice of Pompeo deeply troubling. U.S. Muslim organizations also expressed worry, pointing to past statements from Pompeo that they deemed Islamophobic. Tillerson's insular management style was reinforced by several of his top aides, including Peterlin and Hook, the director of the Secretary's policy planning staff. Hook's division, which in the past had acted as more of a medium to long-term internal think tank, had taken over many policy roles traditionally left to regional and functional bureaus at the department. Finding themselves sidelined, many senior diplomats simply quit or retired over the past year. Among the recent departures was Joseph Yun, the special envoy for North Korea issues. The top-ranking career Foreign Service officer in the department, Thomas Shannon, has also announced he will retire. State employees interviewed on Tuesday said they hoped Pompeo would embrace the whole department and its 75,000 employees across the world. We all know he's more comfortable with Trump and vice versa. That's good, one senior State Department official said. We will want to work successfully with him, but we want him to trust us. Never get in the way of the president and his porn star. Stormy Daniels is starring in the most salacious scandal of Donald Trump's drama-rich presidency. But most Democrats in Congress are intent to look away. The calculation among Democratic leaders is clear: beating the Daniels drum could backfire, putting the focus on their response instead of the president's alleged affair with a porn star and the $130,000 payment from Trump's lawyer to keep her quiet. But as Daniels determined not to go quietly, giving an interview to 60 Minutes set to air this weekend and offering to repay the so-called hush money, a few Democrats are breaking from the pack. They say Congress has a duty to get to the bottom of the sordid episode. And if some Trump critics see a double standard in the approach many Democrats are applying to Daniels, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, Democrat California, wouldn't necessarily disagree. Pelosi acknowledged last week that you can be sure if any Democrat were so closely linked to a sex scandal with potential campaign finance violations, the Republicans would be very involved in it. Of course, Republicans are even less eager to conduct oversight of the Daniels scandal than the president's opponents. So Democrats are left largely as bystanders to an unfolding story that has all the classic ingredients of a career-ending implosion, for any politician but Trump. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, DRI, noted in an interview that in addition to the possible Federal Election Commission violation at issue in the Daniels payment, the $130,000 may have been subject to the gift tax, given that what you have is a very significant transfer of funds. So I think there's a kind of general interest in Congress in making sure that big, fancy people are actually following the laws that everybody else has to follow, Whitehouse said. Asked whether he thought other Democrats were avoiding the topic, he added, "I don't want to speak for colleagues, but I think a lot of people are just put off by the sordid nature of the whole thing." The top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Dianne Feinstein of California, illustrated that point perfectly. "Why are you interested in that?" she asked a reporter in response to a question about Daniels. Asked again whether she was interested in the scandal, she replied, "Not particularly." One senior Democratic aide summed up leadership's strategy for the Daniels storm. "First rule of Trump, let Trump be Trump," the aide said on Monday. "Never get in the way of the president and his porn star." Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, DNY, also ducked a question about Daniels last week, telling reporters at a news conference about infrastructure that "we want to stick to that issue." Some Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee, however, are engaging despite Pelosi's hands-off stand. They issued a lengthy letter last week to Trump's lawyers seeking information about the president's potential involvement in paying off Daniels, as well as his ties to Karen McDougal, a Playboy playmate who claims to have had an affair with Trump more than a decade ago. Before the election, McDougal received $150,000 from the National Enquirer, whose chairman is a friend of Trump, for the rights to her story, which the magazine ever published. "We can assure you we have no interest in Mr. Trump's personal relationships in and of themselves," the Democrats wrote in the 16-page missive. "However, we believe we have an obligation to inquire regarding such matters to the extent they raise questions relating to possible violations of law." The payment to Daniels opens the door to potential violations of federal campaign finance and income tax laws, legal ethics and other laws, and future efforts to extort or otherwise influence the president, they wrote. If the payments to the two women were made with the intention of influencing the election in Trump's favor, they could be considered unlawful unreported in-kind contributions to Trump's campaign, the Democrats argued. A House Democratic aide, speaking on condition of anonymity, insisted there was no daylight between Democratic leaders and rank-and-file members about how to respond to the Daniels payment. Two senior House Democrats who signed on to the letter, Jerry Nadler of New York, the party's top Judiciary Committee member, and Lois Frankel of Florida, chair of the Democratic Women's Working Group, declined to be interviewed on the matter. Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat Connecticut, a member of the Senate Judiciary Panel, said a narrow congressional investigation of the payment, and what the purpose was, might be warranted. "I think we need to consider whether or not the campaign finance laws cover it, and if not, whether they should," Blumenthal said in an interview Monday. "Because quite clearly it seems like it was designed to assist a campaign." but most other Democrats demurred on whether Congress has any role in digging into the Daniels affair, suggesting they're aligned with their leader's move to let Trump and his lawyers dominate news coverage of the controversy. Several referred to the FEC and the legal challenge filed by the actress, whose given name is Stephanie Clifford, seeking to nullify her non-disclosure agreement as the proper forms for the matter to play out. The Daniels dispute is probably going to be sorted out in the courts, Senator Claire McCaskill, Demo, said. We need to have a fully functioning FEC with all of the people in place and doing aggressive enforcement, but I don't really see that there's a place for us right now. Senator Mazie Hirono, Democrat Hawaii, another member of the Judiciary Committee, suggested that lawmakers stay focused primarily on Russian election meddling probes that have gotten thrown off course by partisan wrangling. I think the Robert Mueller investigation is wide-ranging, and who knows if there's some sort of other web that surrounds what happened with Stormy Daniels, Hirono said in an interview. But we're not in a place where we can even investigate the primary thing that we were wanting to investigate,